That was Dr. Larry Brilliant. Again, his book, Sometimes Brilliant: The Impossible Adventure of a Spiritual Seeker and Visionary Physician Who Helped Conquer the Worst Disease in History. I mean, of all the people we've interviewed, and I mentioned this to him, and everybody having very interesting backgrounds, virtually everyone. This guy's background was the most amazing. He was an extra in a film, and he got paid with a plane ticket to India. He used the money with some friends to rent buses in Europe. They wound up in India. He wound up in an ashram. I mean, it's just an unbelievable story.
Yeah, it is. And with the exception of certain amazing pieces of it, there were a lot of people who took overland hippie journey from Europe to India in those days. In fact, I was planning to do it myself. And when I was going to Rishikesh for teacher training to become a TM teacher, but then the course in Rishikesh was canceled. So I never did take that overland journey that many people did through countries that have been at war now for, the last decade or two. It's amazing that people used to just be able to, go through those countries, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan.
That trip ain't going to happen anymore for at least for a long time. And but and then you wound up in Estes Park, Colorado, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I did. I did. But no, but you're right. And I didn't know that certain parts of the story that he just told. I mean, going to the American Express office and being online behind Ram Dass.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible.
And then also his encounter with Steve Jobs when Steve Jobs
I know
was a young hippie and it's interesting what he said about Steve Jobs. He said the one feature about him was how curious he was about everything and how many questions he asked. And obviously, nobody, we've all met people that have gone on to do sort of amazing things. And if you knew them early on, a lot of times,
you might have stayed in touch.
Yeah, exactly.
he was smart enough to stay in touch.
He could have said, someday they'll have something called the internet. And let's stay connected that way.
No, I've met people, around LA and, casually and this and that. And then a few years later, I see them accepting Academy Awards. And,
exactly. That's life, right? So anyway, he was now at the ashram that he was at. Was there a particular spiritual practice or meditation?
No, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. It's one of the things I discovered when writing American Veda. And by the way, I was at that ashram briefly. I took my tour there last year when we were in that part of India. We spent a couple of hours at the ashram.
It's still an active function.
Oh yeah. And Neem Karoli's, and a lot of the places like the rooms where he would meet with people and everything are little shrines now. But it's still there, tucked into the hillside in the Himalayas. And anyway, what I learned when I was researching American Veda was that Neem Karoli Baba didn't go in very much for techniques and practices. He was all about darshan and love and service. And he loved kirtan. That's why we have That's why we have Krishna Das and Jayu Tal, because they learned to do kirtan around him. That was part of the devotional practice. But one of the interesting things was people wanted to learn to meditate and all that. So he had learn maybe yoga asanas. So he had teachers that he would send them to, and apparently one of the yogis nearby was Baba Haridas, who eventually came to America and started Mount Madonna. And another person, sort of his referral service, was a great Buddhist teacher, Goenka. And some of the people who had gone to see Neem Karoli wanted to learn a meditation practice, so they went to Goenka. And some of those people ended up becoming the leading American Buddhist teachers. Jack Kornfeld, Sharon Salzberg. We should have them.
So Kornfeld started out at Neem Karoli Baba's ashram.
That's what I was
Wow.
told. And then
And where is that in India?
it's it's near Nainital. It's in the of India, and sort of the eastern part of North
So in
India.
the foothills of the Himalayas, like
Yeah, and from there, I mean, you're fairly close to enough to see, snow-capped mountains and
right,
all
right,
from that area. But sort of, on the way to Nepal, you could say.
right. I've known other people that have been with gurus and been very devoted, and then the guru would say something like, and we saw this in the TM movement, where the guru would say, "Okay, go and get your PhD in Sanskrit, or go get your PhD in physiology, or become whatever it was." And then those people, because they felt this was like a message from God, or the from from some divine level, when they went to get that PhD, they were going to be the top student in the class because they went there with such amazing focus. And this was not just something they were going to do to get a job. This was fulfilling the request of their teacher. And so I'm sure when, that's what motivated him to meet with those people at the, World Health Organization or wherever it was. He said 15 times he wasn't going to give up because he knew in his mind it was the right thing to do, and eventually it would happen. So yeah, I've seen that before, and it's remarkable what he did. And again, uh, our theme sometimes when discussing with our guests, taking that inner development and bringing it out to make a better world. It was very clear that's he's a perfect example of that.
Yes, he is, and it's also interesting that he kept going back. Now, if he just had the idea to go to work for the World Health Organization, or it was just some young doctor, wanting to do good work, I don't know that he would have had that kind of persistence.
Right.
But because his guru kept telling him to go back, he went back.
There was no going. There was no going to see the guru again until he had accomplished what he set him
so
to do.
the guru was going to keep sending him back, so he didn't have much choice but to clean up his act. And that whole business of cutting your hair and shaving and put on good clothes. Some of us who
Right.
Worked for Maharishi and the TM movement knows what that was like, and the ill-fitting suits. But sometimes being a good disciple,
Mm-hmm.
it has led some people astray, but it has also changed people's lives for the better. By saying, "Well, my guru told me to do this." Sometimes that's the absolute best thing to do, and it obviously was for young Dr. Brilliant.
Doctor, what a name! And he also mentioned he didn't discuss his religious upbringing, but he did mention that within Judaism and within Hinduism, there is the message, the teaching to go out and create a better world. So I assume he grew up Jewish, whether he was observant or Orthodox or Reformed or whatever, I don't know. But certainly that had a big impact.
Whatever it was, he certainly sounds like he had a good Jewish mother.
Yeah, exactly. And it's 97 and still using his title of doctor to make reservations. That was very funny. I have a feeling she was tremendously supportive. And also, his wife, she was a disciple with him.
Yeah.
She was on the same spiritual journey. And I liked it. He said, "Who said hippie couples don't stay together?" It's 47 years later, they're together. Yeah. And obviously have been on not only a romantic path together, but on a very spiritual path, supporting one another. And that's a great story in and of itself.
Well, it's also another story of a strong, great woman being a driving force and not getting enough credit for it.
Right.
She as he put it, it was a negotiation to even get him to go to the ashram, and look how it changed his life.
And it turns she has I read a PhD in public health administration, and an equal partner in many of her husband's enterprises. I was reading.
Well, there you go.
Co-founder of Seaver Foundation. She was instrumental in the World Health Organization's smallpox eradication program. So she's really out there
So
on the front lines
she's
as well.
been there, been there
Yeah,
with her
yeah,
own expertise and her own action all these years. So
right,
good for her, and so I'm glad we can give her some credit.
right. And
I mean,
also, you go ahead.
yeah. No, I think sometimes in these spiritual movements and a lot of great things that happen in the world, there are people who don't get enough credit, and
Right,
most of the time they're women.
right. And often in the spiritual world, like every other parts, other institution in the world, there's a lot of sexist behavior, and women's role has been diminished in many organizations. We still see that certainly in Catholicism, but I think that's changing, and people are becoming more aware of the female spiritual luminaries that have been with us in the past and continue to be with us in the present.
And I think the future is going to be more and more of that.
Hmm.
I speak from time to time at yoga gatherings,
Right.
modern yoga gatherings. I was just at gave a talk at a group that was being trained as yoga teachers, and they were like, there was one guy
Hmm.
and a room full of women. And so the leadership is probably going to be shifting in a more feminine direction.
Hmm. Wow. So he is now very involved with some of the philanthropic work of Silicon Valley, and that's a great thing. Also, the fact that these young entrepreneurs that have started these tremendously successful companies want to give back, and that they seek out the help of people like Larry in doing that. And I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of good stuff will come out of it. Well, a
Yep.
very
Okay.
memorable guest,
Yep.
and I also want to say he mentioned this is the fifth. We this discussion, this taping went on in it is now 2017, and the 50th anniversary of the Summer of Love, 1967. And I like that he said, look, that back then a lot of us were starry-eyed and said, hey, the world has changed. It's a new age and all that. And many of our group have maybe become callous to that belief, but it's still there. Much has changed for the good, and many of the good movements forward that exist in our society today were started then. So never give up hope. Move forward.
Yes. And, not to get nostalgic and sound like, the old guys at the nursing home talking about their
Yeah.
past, but it's relevant today. I meet younger spiritual people all the time. Some people who, been on, who are devotees of Neem Karoli Baba, who were born long after he died, and all the young yoga teachers and practitioners. Um, and they don't want to hear about some stuff that happened 50 years ago any more than
Right.
during the Summer of Love we wanted to hear about World War I or whatever. But it's relevant today
Right.
because a lot of what there has influenced their lives in the spiritual direction just really took off
Right.
50 years ago, and it influenced their parents and their grandparents and the whole culture. So
Yeah. Hey,
it's relevant.
I spoke to a young person not long ago who had watched the movie Woodstock. I mean, I think maybe they were visiting their parents and they had to watch it, and they said, "Wow, I wish I had lived during that era. It looked like a lot of fun." So
Yeah, I know.
there were aspects of it that were fun for sure.
Yeah,
So
well, it's also romanticized because there were aspects that weren't so much fun,
absolutely, yeah.
like
So
bad drug trips and Vietnam and people dying, and so it wasn't all peace and love,
exactly.
but a very eventful time. And Larry Brilliant is one of those people who were influenced by that time, who's gone on to really do his share of making the world a better
Right.
place.
And again, his book sometimes brilliant. Till next
Yeah.
time, Phil.
Okay, Dennis. See you later.
Later.